Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to dial in. Welcome back to another episode. We are in the second week of January, and we are officially on a different platform right now. We are on 303 Sports Network, and if you've been paying attention and dialed in over the last few months or so, there is also a big change. Got a new co-host. We got a huge one. He's a big Chargers fan, and he's definitely one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet in the world. Ryan Kirton, welcome to Dialed In, dude.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I've been a fan of your podcast for, the last several months now since I've known you, really, and
love it.
I'm happy to be a part of it now. I mean, we have new ownership, as you mentioned, which is really exciting. And
yes.
So I got to come in here and be a part of it, and I love talking about football and watching football, and so this is a big opportunity for me.
Definitely. And if you've been paying attention on 303 Network, you should know that we have a whole bunch of other talented folks that are going to be talking a bunch about different types of sports, women's hoops, football, golf, basketball, and they're all incredible, and I'm sure every each one of you is going to love the hell out of them. So make sure you subscribe to the 303 Sports Network, and if you're paying attention to Dialed In, then make sure you like and subscribe as well. All right. Let's stop stalling. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So this weekend, we got the playoffs coming up. First game's tomorrow at 4:30. We got the Bears playing, obviously, at 8 p.m. Eastern. But first, we got to talk about, the latest coaching and general manager changes that took place over the last few days or so. Obviously, Black Monday has hit the NFL, which means teams had to make tough decisions that, are definitely best for the football team, but it's just, you never like telling someone that, you lost your job. But, when you look at all the changes that happened and all the guys that were let go, and even those that were, told they were going to stay for another year, which change did you see coming from a mile away?
I mean, honestly, I think it was John Harbaugh. When you were first, writing these notes for the show, you said that, this was probably the least surprising, or the most surprising coaching change of the bunch. But based on the way that this Ravens team has been performing these last few years, I think that they're way too talented of a team to be coming up short like this, especially now that they've missed the playoffs entirely. They haven't had more than one win in a playoff stretch since they won the Super Bowl in 2012. Right. Mm-hmm. And, they have Lamar, two-time MVP Derrick Henry. They have studs on defense, Kyle Hamilton, Awuzie, and it's amazing how little they've done with this team, considering all these big names. Like their defense, I mentioned Kyle Hamilton, one of the best safeties in the league, and they're still second worst in passing yards per game this year.
Right.
And so I think, maybe if they had made that kick at the end and made the playoffs, Harbaugh would still be here coaching, but I think that was the final nail in the coffin for him.
I personally don't think it's the most surprising. I think the reason why I was surprised is because the Ravens actually did this. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that they were actually saying, you know what, we're willing to move on from John Harbaugh. Because you got to understand, they've only had 3 head coaches since they moved back to Baltimore.
It's amazing.
Unlike the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're willing to fire them if they know that things need to change. I remember when Brian Billick was the head coach. After the 2007 season, they knew a change needed to be made. They weren't the same team as they were in 2000 when they had the best defense in NFL history. There were playoff appearances along the way, but just you weren't getting the results that you wanted, and there needed to be a new voice. That's why they brought in Harbaugh. And unlike the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're willing to move on from them. I mean, Pittsburgh, they just either let them retire or their contracts just conveniently expire. And I think Harbaugh had, 2-3 years left on his extension. So the fact that the Ravens were willing to say, all right, something needs to change because we've had way too much talent, we've had way too much potential, and we're just letting it go to waste. I'm happy that they finally did it. They sucked it up and they realized, all right, we're too talented to keep coming up short time and time again. Let's see if we could bring in someone who will get this team over the hump. But the one that I saw coming a mile away was the Falcons. Them firing Raheem Morris and then Terry Fontenot. Obviously, I think the way the Falcons closed off the season was really impressive, being able to beat Tampa and the Rams with Michael Penix being out, with Drake London missing significant time, towards the second half of the year. But you could just tell that, just like the Ravens, they had a lot of talent, and yet all it's got in them is complete mediocrity. I mean, you've got one of the best running backs in Bijan Robinson. You've got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, an outstanding offensive line, a defense full of playmakers that was second in sacks and seventh in takeaways, and yet you just couldn't get the results that you wanted in one of the worst divisions in football. So I've definitely felt like, I thought Raheem Morris probably should have stayed at least another year, but I can see that the organization just needed a fresh start. And then with Terry Fontenot, it was just when they fell to 4-9, I thought that's when he should have been canned, because think about what he did. I mean, he gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, and 1 month later he drafts Michael Penix, and you're already creating a quarterback controversy when you didn't really need one. If you're going to give Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, why are you drafting a quarterback in the first round when you needed an edge rusher or somebody to help out on your defense? And then ironically, the next year later, you trade a first-round pick to get James Pierce. Good player, don't get me wrong, but definitely too big of a price to pay. And, when you saw the fact that the Falcons, missed out, completely collapsed 2 years ago, and then last year just everything completely fell apart when Penix got hurt and, the injuries took place and the losses kept piling up. You just knew something had to be different. They even fired Rich McKay, their CEO, who'd been there for like the last 20 years or so. But I feel like the Falcons, letting go of Morris and Fontenot, I think it needed to be done. And honestly, with Matt Ryan in charge of football ops, potentially, who knows what the hell's going to happen?
Yeah, well, it's funny. You mentioned earlier that maybe they could have kept Morris for another year, and I think they should have kept Morris for another year. The way that they finished this 2025 season, they had 4 wins to end the year, including against the Rams, Buccaneers. The Saints had won 3 in a row, I think, going into that game.
I think 4 in a row.
Yeah, 4 in a row. So, I mean, they just had this momentum going into the end of the year. And they are a very talented team, but they're also a very young team. Bijan, what is it, 3rd year now? He just finished his 3rd year.
Right.
Kyle Pitts, also pretty young. Penix was out with injury, and their defense has gotten better, but they're also still they need a few more years to improve, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that the way that they ended this year, I think the players still have some trust in Raheem Morris. Like, they were playing hard at the end of the year. They were playing for him, I think.
Apparently, Bijan did not want him to get fired. Like, they were pretty much voicing their support to the media, saying, yeah, we want Raheem to stay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they could have at least given him another year, especially given, like, as you said, this is the, NFC South, the most boring division in football.
Yeah.
And so I think they probably could have made the playoffs with Raheem Morris next year. I don't know who they're going to bring in. They certainly are talented enough to make the playoffs, but we'll have to see what they do and if they're able to do it.
So which move did surprise you the most?
Honestly, I'm going to say Pete Carroll. I
really?
I think.
Wow.
Well, I mean, just think about, how much they signed him for. 3 years, $45 million guaranteed. And
don't know why. But
don't know why. But I feel like if you're going to do that, you need to at least give this guy who's, won Super Bowls another chance. Like, he's obviously proven himself as a great coach in the NFL. And obviously, as, his career got to an end in Seattle, it maybe wasn't so good. But he's still energetic on the sideline. Like, he's chewing gum as fast as anybody, as fast as he ever did. And I think you also need to take a look at this Raiders team. That team is bad.
Yeah.
That team is really bad. And, like, you got Ashton Genty. He's going to be a star, I think. Brock Bowers already proven himself.
Yep.
And on defense, you have Max Crosby. But other than that, like, who do you really have on that team that's going to get you more than 3 wins, maybe 5 if you really overperform? So I think they could have given him at least another year, especially with how much of a hit that they're taking by letting him go.
I think the minute that the Raiders got the first overall pick, they knew they were going to fire him because, I mean, listen, Pete Carroll might have had a great career when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, won them their first and only Super Bowl, and, had a lot of wins, had a lot of success when he was there. But you know what? If this was 10 years ago, I would agree with you. This was the most surprising. But when you look at how everything played out, you got to understand, the only reason why Geno Smith even went to the Raiders in the first place was because of Carroll. And it completely blew up in their faces. He ended up leading the league in picks. The offense was an absolute turnstile. And defensively, it's literally just one guy. And when he had to deal with a knee injury, Pete Carroll pretty much just said, you know what? We're going to shut you down. And he left the building. And that's your face of the franchise. So the fact that his career keeps getting wasted by just such an archaic organization, you just knew that you had to, cut your ties with Carroll, because with Fernando Mendoza in your lap, just waiting to be taken, in about a few months, you had to at least do something to try to reinvigorate some hope, because the Raiders have been an absolute miserable franchise over the last 20 years. But I would probably say The one that surprised me the most, I think it, like I said, I think it was just Harbaugh, but also, I mean, you think about like the other moves that happened. I think I'm probably gonna have to go with like, there's Jonathan Gannon and Mike McDaniel.
It was a Black Week. It wasn't just Black Monday.
Really?
It was all throughout the week.
Absolutely. I would probably say, I actually wasn't even too surprised with the Kevin Stefanski move. If you really think about it, because he's got 2 Coach of the Year awards, but if you look at it, the reason why he was brought in was to fix the offense. And there were a couple years where they've been, above average when they had Baker Mayfield and when they had Joe Flacco, but it wasn't consistent. And just this past year with the quarterback carousel and the fact that, when Shedeur Sanders got his opportunity, there were rumblings like, is Kevin Stefanski really giving him a chance, or is he just trying to sabotage him? So I think that with Cleveland's head coaching search, I don't really know what in the world they're going to do when it comes to are they going to bring an offensive mind? Are they going to promote someone from within? Are they going to because defense is not the issue.
Absolutely not. No.
So I'd probably say Harbaugh is the most surprising, just based on everything else. But who do you think should have stayed another year? Do you think it was Raheem Morris?
Yeah, I mean, I already sort of mentioned that I think Raheem Morris, I think he still has the most room for improvement with this Falcons team. I think, like I said, they are a very talented team, but they're very young. Bijan had his best year ever. Kyle Pitts had his best year.
Right.
Penix was dealing with injury for most of the year, and he's shown flashes. I don't think he's going to be an elite quarterback in the NFL, but I think maybe you win an extra game or 2 if he's healthy, and that's all you need to make the playoffs. So I think if you let him develop this team, who the team trusts, as you mentioned, I think it could still work.
Yep. But who do you think should have been let go after the season?
Zach Taylor. I mean, I don't really think there's any doubt about that. We talked about John Harbaugh earlier and how that for me that wasn't surprising, and I think those problems with Harbaugh, you can multiply that by 10 with Zach Taylor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the defenses were absolutely horrible. They had a bunch of blown leads. They're pretty much just wasting Joe Burrow's prime, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are sitting back like, there's not much more that we can do because we're literally doing everything we can to make sure Joe Burrow is happy. It's ironic, the Browns beat the Bengals in the regular season finale. Myles Garrett got his record-breaking 23rd sack. The Browns won that game. They announced that they were going to fire Kevin Stefanski and keep Andrew Berry. And the Bengals just pretty much said after a 6-11 season, nope, we're not changing anything.
Yeah.
So that's just absolutely atrocious. And it's like, you might as well write off 2026 if you're a Bengals fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also certainly a universe where all 4 coaches in the AFC North get fired. Because, I mean, I think, I was going to ask earlier, do you think that if Tyler Loop had made that kick that Mike Tomlin would have been fired, or they would have given him another
They would
year?
have needed to hit the reset button badly because, I mean, obviously it's just been mediocre. It's just been mediocrity in Pittsburgh. It's Aaron Rodgers' potential final season in the NFL. You got guys on the defensive side that are getting older. You don't really have a lot of playmakers on offense. You pretty much just have to say to yourself, okay, we need to actually start rebuilding. But the thing is, the Steelers don't tank. I don't even remember the last time. I think the last time they had a losing season was 2003 at 6-10, and then 2 years later they go on to win the Super Bowl. But I would probably say, besides Zach Taylor, I think it might have been Aaron Glenn. And the reason why. But here's the thing, I never like one-and-done coaches. I hate that concept, and it's cruel. But when you're in charge of a defense that had 0 interceptions in 17 games, and you're pretty much just saying, okay, we're still, believing in Aaron Glenn and Darren Mogi. I mean, yeah, if you want to give them another chance, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. But the Jets are just an absolute train wreck right now.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just, I don't know what in the world, there's nothing there that's going to be attractive or appealing because Breece Hall is on the trade block, possibly. Who knows? Because if you remember, before the trade deadline, he was rumored to, get sent off to the Chiefs for a 3rd-round pick, or at least that was their asking price. Garrett Wilson, he's a stud, but he missed a lot of time due to a knee injury. The defense is just pretty much a bunch of backups at third stringers because they pretty much just, went through a fire sale before that deadline with Quinnen and Sauce Gardner. So I don't know. I just feel like no matter what you do when you're the Jets, you just know that things are going to implode one way or the other. You can make all the splash moves or sexy picks all you want, but if you don't have a right guy leading the way and someone that you don't really believe in, then, Things are dark right now with MetLife. I mean, hey, the Giants are still sticking with Joe Shane, so I think they can kind of get the premise there.
Yeah, and they had a good end of the year, too,
Yeah.
If they can get healthy, if they can get Scadaboo back, I mean, I think you're looking at maybe a 8-win team next year.
I mean, I know a lot of Giants fans were, upset that they didn't get the first overall pick, but it's like, what were they even going to do with that? Like, draft Mendoza when you traded up for Jackson Dart the year before? It's like, they were probably going to trade out of it one way or the other, or at least just, go for somebody else different. But I don't know. There are going to be, the new coaching decisions and GM hires, they'll be announced within the next week or two. The Dolphins actually just announced their new general manager, John Eric Sullivan, the I think it's the vice president of player personnel for the Packers. So I never like to judge, GM decisions right away. I pretty much just let everything take its course. But we'll see what happens there. Now let's get to, the real fun of the entire weekend. We got the NFL playoffs, baby. I got to be honest, in all my years of watching this sport and covering it and talking about it, I've never been more excited for the playoffs than I am now, because it's not necessarily because the Chiefs are eliminated. It's just because, well, actually it kind of is, because with them out, everything is so wide open because the Bills are not as strong as they used to be. The Eagles are not as dominant. The Ravens are out. So somebody is going to win a freaking championship this year, and we're all going to be surprised one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I can't absolutely wait for this. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, of the 14 teams that are in the playoff, there's 12 of them at least that can probably win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's that wide open this year. And there's no Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
The Eagles obviously won last year, but they're not the Eagles from a year ago. We all know this. We know that they had that really rough stretch end of November, beginning of December.
Right.
A lot of issues in the locker room. So I mean, I don't think that they're a lock, despite on paper the fact that they should be a lock.
Yep.
It really could just be anybody. It's that open this year.
I mean, it says something when nobody has any faith in either one seed to actually go to the Super Bowl. Or you're gonna have there's a 50% side that says, oh yeah, I have total faith in them, and there's another side that's just they're probably getting sent home in the first round. But we got a whole few weeks to see, who gets to go to the Super Bowl, who will play in San Francisco. Let's start with the first game on our docket. We got the Carolina Panthers playing the Los Angeles Rams at 4:30 Eastern Time at Bank of America Stadium. This is the second time that they'll be playing each other this year. If you recall, the first time, the Panthers pulled off probably one of the biggest upsets of the season by outlasting LA 31-28. Bryce Young had one of his better performances. Matthew Stafford threw 2 picks. And, the Rams just fell up short by 3 points. Now they're looking for some revenge, and they're trying to come in with a better mindset. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
I think I don't see a world where the Panthers win 2 games this year against the Rams. I think, that, as you mentioned, that was one of, if not Matthew Stafford's absolute worst game of the year. And the way that the Panthers offense was rolling that game, that was the best they've looked all year. And I think it all has to go wrong for the Rams. It all has to go right for the Panthers. That's what we saw the first time. I don't really see that happening again. I think it's going to be maybe not the biggest blowout, but again, one of the biggest blowouts of Wild Card Weekend.
I mean, there's always a chance that the Panthers could do it again because they did it before. But I agree with you. I think the only way that, a similar or the same outcome happens is if Bryce Young plays exactly the way he did in that game, which was come up on big 3rd and 4th down conversions, play great, don't turn the ball over, and, just come through down the stretch. And, there have been too many times this year where anytime you do have a semblance of hope or expectations for him, he just completely disappoints. So I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of jinxing them if I do pick the Rams because it's that'll probably mean the Panthers are going to be all right, we're going to show that we actually deserve to win this division. But I agree with you. I think the Rams, they're going to come in with, more discipline and with more focus. Offensively, they know as long as they don't turn the ball over, they'll be fine. And defensively, they just got to make sure that they, can force a turnover or 2 of their own to make sure that all the momentum's on their side. So let's make our final locks. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think Rams run away with this one. I don't see a world where Matthew Stafford plays as bad as he did last time. And even if he does, I don't think Bryce Young's going to step up to the plate as much as he did last time. I think Rams win by probably about 3 scores.
Yeah, I would probably say I'm going to pick the Rams too, but I feel like it's going to be a little closer through the first, 45 minutes or so. But I think, at some point in time, the Rams, they'll, get a better groove on offense. They'll wear Carolina out, and they'll find a way to pull ahead by double digits. Yeah. So it's not exactly the most appealing game on the schedule, but I feel like, still want to watch it just to see how it goes. You don't want it to be
absolutely.
You don't want it to be a complete blowout, or else it's just going to be, or else you're going to look back and you're going to think, you know what, Tampa Bay, this probably should have been you getting your butts kicked. But let's move on to this next game here. Saturday night, probably arguably the most fun game of the entire weekend. We got the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. For the Bears, this is literally their Super Bowl, if you really think about it, because beating the Packers is just always for whatever reason. We have a lot of friends that are Bears fans. Anytime they beat the Packers, they are absolutely losing their minds. It feels like they're about to cry, and I'm like, all right, enjoy your Super Bowl. We'll just see what happens in the playoffs. But I think, a lot of it is justified because nobody expected, the Bears to have this fun and, crazy of a season. So, I don't know. What's your mindset, when you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, you said, let's see how they do in the playoffs. You're here. This is, if you're going to beat the Packers, it is kind of the Super Bowl in a way, because I don't think anyone expected the Bears to make this much of a leap in Ben Johnson's first year.
No.
And they look great. They look like a complete football team. They're not perfect by any means, but Caleb Williams, massive step up this year. Their run game is one of the best in the league. Their defense has looked pretty solid all year round. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough game, and obviously you love to see a division matchup in the first round. You got a lot of really good games, but you're right, it is going to be very close, and it really could go either way. Yep,
pretty much like every other Bears game this season.
Yeah.
I think with the Packers, what I'm really concerned about is their defense, because they have been absolutely decimated. They lost Micah Parsons. They lost Devontae Wyatt. I mean, they brought in Trayvon Diggs, which is not exactly a huge upgrade, but they just brought him for secondary depth. And really offensively, they've just been really inconsistent all season long. And obviously, when you look at it, they lost Tucker Kraft. They lost Elton Jenkins. Josh Jacobs has been really banged up all season long. And you never really know who's in the passing game is going to step up on a week-to-week basis. And more importantly, the quarterback situation has been a little bit of a conundrum because Jordan Love's been knocked out a couple times. Malik Willis, he didn't play in the second half of the Ravens game and hadn't played since because of a shoulder injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were forced to play freaking Clayton Tune in the regular season finale. Obviously, they had the 7th seed locked up, but the point is a lot of the injuries and a lot of the attrition are really starting to keep up, and are really starting to catch up. And I'm scared that everything's just going to come crashing down in this playoff game. But I agree with you. I think we're going to get a close game one way or the other. The Bears are not going to put this team away, even if they do win. And we all know in the fourth quarter, that's the one where we really have to pay attention to the most.
Yeah,
because
sorry, no, I was going to say they are the most complete fourth quarter team of the bunch.
Yeah.
And I also agree. I think it is going to come down to how healthy those guys on offense are for the Packers. If Jordan Love or even Malik Willis is completely healthy by the time that game starts, I think they certainly give themselves the best chance of winning.
Yeah.
But I do think that the Bears are going to pull this one out. I think that, being at home, I think, as I said, they're healthy, and I think they're a complete team. And they're not going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl, but I think they're going to get past this really banged up Packers team.
I mean, honestly, when you look at the NFC landscape, who's to say they can't go to the Super Bowl? Obviously, the Rams went from being the best team in the NFL to now being the 5th seed in the NFC. The 49ers are the 6th, and they had a chance to get the number 1 spot just Saturday night against Seattle. And they barely beat the Bears by 4 points. So I feel like I was saying before, in both conferences, literally anything can happen. But let's make our picks. Who you got?
Yeah, I do have the Bears winning. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think Packers might build a lead early in this game, but the Bears in the fourth quarter, they've been too good. We've seen what Caleb Williams can do in the clutch, including against this Packers team just a few weeks ago. So I do think the Bears squeak it out 24-20.
Yeah. I'm going to pick the Bears. I think, like I said, I feel like the Packers defense, their injuries, I feel like, they're not going to be at even strength. They're going to have a really hard time stopping the run. And we know that the Bears are a great rushing team, and that's their bread and butter. And yeah, I think I'm expecting a pretty decent performance from Jordan Love, as long as they don't give the Bears any life with a, momentum swinging takeaway, like an interception or a lost fumble. I think that Jordan Love can have a good game, but I feel like at home, I think the Bears are playing with house money, and I feel like they definitely still have a long way to go, but I feel like they have what it takes to, get into the second round. So I think they could win this one like 22-19.
Yeah,
so,
it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. All right, Sunday afternoon, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen versus Josh Hines Allen. So obviously that matchup is always, fun. Or it's been fun since what, like 2021, I think?
Yeah, when he was drafted, right.
Yeah. Ironically, Urban Meyer was the head coach of that team when they won that game. But I think, a lot of people might say, okay, this is definitely the Bills' years to lose because you don't have to worry about the Chiefs anymore and the Ravens. But there are some people that are not really giving them a chance. I don't know. What do you see from this?
Well, the Jaguars, I think, are probably one of the most complete teams in football right now, at least that made the playoffs. You got Lawrence, also a guy that took a massive leap this year. Another run game that's really solid.
Yes.
But you mentioned guys like Josh Hines Allen, Trayvon Walker. Like, it's similar to the Bears, but I think that, especially if you take into account their defense, like they just have more stars on that team. And that receiving game is really good, too.
Well, Jacoby Myers has just been a revelation.
Yeah, no, he was probably the best free agent signing of any team this year. Just the way that they've been using him, and he's been looking as good as he ever has.
Definitely. I think the Jaguars are on an 8-game win streak? I mean, think about this for a second. November 11th, the Indianapolis Colts are 8-2. They have one of the best records in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars had recently blown a 29-10 lead to the Houston Texans with Davis Mills at quarterback to slump to 5-4. Since then, the Colts lost 7 straight and are now out of the playoffs, and the Jaguars won 8 in a row, and they're going to be hosting a playoff game. And ironically, it's to the same team that they hosted in 2017 in the wild card when the Bills had Tyrod Taylor and Nathan Peterman, and the Jaguars were playing Blake Bortles. It's been that long. But, the Jaguars could do a lot of things that, the Buffalo Bills are going to have, trouble with. The Jaguars are number 1 in stopping the run. They're second in takeaways. Pass rush is not completely dominant or explosive, but, the Bills' offensive line has been banged up to some degree. Buffalo's defense has been absolutely horrible against the run. And you're going up against, Travis Etienne and Bashal Tuden, 2 guys that can really, control the line of scrimmage. And Trevor Lawrence, like you said, has just been playing absolutely fantastic. I mean, I think he finished with the most touchdown passes in a single season in franchise history.
Yeah.
So, I mean, considering, how the Jaguars were last year, if you had told me that this was going to happen, I would have been like, yeah, you're out of your freaking mind. But Liam Cohen has done a tremendous job. I think he definitely deserves, a few votes for Coach of the Year. I don't think he's going to.
I think he should get it.
I mean, he probably should, but, there's Mike Vrabel and there's Ben Johnson, 2 other guys that, were able to bring their programs back from the brink of destruction. So we'll have another month to figure out who wins that.
Yeah.
But I like the Jaguars in this one. I think, they can run the ball. Trevor Lawrence has not turned the ball over in the last 2 months or so, or hasn't turned it over at an alarming rate. And defensively, they have really started to gel, and they've really started to improve. And I think with the Buffalo Bills, if Josh Allen's not playing like an absolute god, or if James Cook isn't running for 200 yards, then I feel like the Bills are going to be a little bit outmatched and overpowered, which is crazy considering that the Bills, like we said earlier, without Patrick Mahomes, there's no excuse for Buffalo to not win the AFC. And they might be one and done because they have not won a road playoff game in so long. And Josh Allen is 0-4. In that type of circumstance. But who do you got? What's your pick?
Yeah, I also have the Jaguars winning this game. It really could swing either way. I feel like for whatever reason, I don't feel like it's going to be a close game. I feel like it's either the Bills run away with it a little bit or the Jaguars run away with it a little bit, just because these teams can be explosive any given week. Josh Allen could have, 300 passing yards and another 100 on the ground some weeks, or he could throw for like 150.
Yeah.
Right. That's just kind of how it's been for the Bills this year. They've been a bit too up and down, and I like their defense. They got a good signing in Joey Bosa this year. He's been healthy, but it is going to be really hard to slow down that Jacksonville team. I do think that they come away with the win.
Do you think Josh Allen's going to be under the most pressure, not just with this weekend, but like perhaps the entire playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think for the entire playoffs, I would say Josh Allen. I think, he can win this week and still face a lot of pressure. Like it does feel as though it's Super Bowl or bust for the Bills.
Right.
Like as you said, there's no Chiefs in the playoffs. There's no Ravens. There's no Bengals. And in a year that is this open, it should be the Bills because they're the veteran team here.
Right.
But, there are also a lot of really good teams in the AFC.
Yeah, and they're not scared of Buffalo right now.
No, I wouldn't be scared of Buffalo either. And I think they got a really bad draw, too, with Jacksonville.
Yep. Well, that's what they do when they lose to Philadelphia in a must-win situation. Because who knows? I mean, the Patriots would have still won the division anyway in hindsight, but still, you think about it and you're like, that's the one game that, you let them slip away. Or was it the blowout against Miami? I'm not sure.
There were a lot. I mean, there were a few like that where it's like, how did this happen?
I know.
They lost.
I mean, they lost to New England. They lost to Atlanta, Miami. They got absolutely blown out by Houston, or they got completely bottled up by Houston. Josh Allen got sacked 8 times, and then the Eagles lost. So there were definitely more than a few that they let slip out of their hands. But like I said, I like the Jaguars too. I think they're actually going to win this game by double digits.
I agree.
I think the Jaguars, they're going to have a very clean game. I think it's going to be a heavy ground and pound approach. And even if that's the case, then Trevor Lawrence has proven that he is capable of having, outstanding performances. I mean, just a month ago against the Broncos, he had 5 total touchdowns or something. And, he was able to, slice and dice that Denver secondary.
Yeah.
And he did get sacked 5 times by, the best pass rush in football. But he went into Mile High and said, this is the team that you should fear heading into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think that in their house in Duval, I think the Jaguars, I think it's going to be a little bit similar to the Rams-Panthers game where, it's going to be really close for, a good stretch. But in their home field, I think the Jaguars will make a few more plays down the stretch to pull away. I think they get it done 31-20, honestly.
That is exactly my final score. That is exactly what I said. Yeah, no, I mean, they beat the Texans early this year. They beat the Broncos, as you said. They blew out the Chargers by 30.
Right.
They've beaten just about all of the contenders in the AFC, I think.
They beat the Chiefs.
They beat
on
the
Monday
Chiefs.
Night Football.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, based on the way it went this year.
But at the time, it was...
No, it's true.
Right.
Absolutely. At that point, they were still in contention for the playoffs, and they were still probably one of the favorites for the Super Bowl. So, yeah, a lot of big wins for them, and I can see them definitely carrying this on to the playoffs.
All right, let's transition into the next matchup. We got the 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This is definitely a sexy matchup, if you will, because, you got the defending champs taking on, one of the best teams in the NFC. And this is the first postseason matchup between these two squads since 2022 in the NFC Championship. It was the infamous game where Brock Purdy, had the equivalent of Tommy John surgery or had the Tommy John injury with the UCL tear. Yeah. Josh Johnson took over, who just ironically beat Philadelphia last week, in the regular season finale before getting concussed on his own. And after that, it was just an absolute blowout. The Eagles ended up winning 38-7 before losing to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And now these two are back at it again, but different parts, different moving pieces, yet same goal, which is to, go on as far of a deep playoff run as possible. But I guess the question I have to ask is, what's your confidence level when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles and their chances of, getting back to the Super Bowl?
I mean, we've said it so many times, it's like a broken record, but it is just so wide open. Why not them? On paper, they should absolutely be contenders for the Super Bowl. And I mean, Jalen Hurts had a few bad games this year, but has been pretty solid in general. Saquon taking a down year. There's all this A.J. Brown stuff going on.
Right.
But, they do still have a pretty great defense that's been carrying them to these wins. You mentioned the Bills game just a few minutes ago. They wouldn't have won if they hadn't held Josh Allen to 12 points in that game, 0 through 3 quarters.
Yep.
They definitely have put themselves in a position where they can win. I just don't know, with all of this talk and surrounding the locker room,
and
of
course,
trust issues with the coaching staff, and I don't know if I trust them necessarily to get to the Super Bowl. But again, it's why not? Why not them?
I think the reason why not them is because their offense is absolutely abysmal. It is so bad. And obviously, with Lane Johnson coming back, that is going to be a huge boost, especially when it comes to their run game, because, Saquon Barkley is still an absolute stud, but the problem is he just hasn't had the rushing lanes available for him to, have that huge home run touchdown that we usually see, that we usually saw,
yeah, we're used to it.
That we're used to it, yeah. And I think, it'll even be a better win for Jalen Hurts because their passing game has just been really inconsistent. It started to get a little better, especially when they were able to clinch the division. But they had 2 halves this year where Jalen Hurts couldn't complete a pass. And when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, it's unacceptable. And that's why I've been really bouncing back and forth with this one because the 49ers defense might be wrecked to hell. I mean, they just lost Tatum Bethune for the season. They've already been without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. They've had injuries on all 3 levels in some way, shape, or form. But the Eagles' offense is just so catastrophically horrible. That took a while. And you just wonder how in the world Kevin Patullo is still in charge of play calling because when you saw it with the Lions and when you saw it with Washington on the defensive side of the ball, you just kind of knew that it was just like, okay, these guys, whoever was in charge before, they're probably getting let go at the end of the season. And the fact that the Eagles haven't made any changes or any notable additions or moves with that is just kind of alarming. So I like the 49ers, but then again, you remember that regular season finale against Seattle, their offense only scored 3 points when they hadn't been, just the last week, they were forced to punt for the first time in over a month.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could really go either way here, but who do you got for this one?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the game last week, and I think it's weird to say, but I think if anything, that's something that, the 49ers should look at in a positive way, just the way that their defense played that game.
Yeah.
Because just a couple weeks before that game, Seattle hosted the Rams.
Yep.
Rams have one of the best defenses in football.
And they blew it.
Yeah, 38 points in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And, in Levi's last week, they held that team to 13. And the way that the offense has been playing up until that game, I think there's a lot to be excited about. McCaffrey had a couple really good games down the stretch. He had a good game against the Bears. And, Kittle, he's still out there. Purdy's playing his best football. I think it also comes down to if Trent Williams can come back, which it seems like he can. But
maybe.
There's a lot to like with this offense. I just think they needed to get the defense fixed, and it seems like they found something against Seattle, and I think they will be able to carry that into Philadelphia, but obviously if they don't, it could be just an absolute runaway.
Yeah. So you got the Niners for this one?
I do. I think it's going to be close. I think the Niners defense gets it done. I think they win by 3.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm still struggling to make this pick now because I like Vic Fangio and I love, what he's been able to do for that defense over the last 2 seasons. And, he's definitely the type of coordinator that can, cause Kyle Shanahan's offense to have a few headaches. And when you're at home with, the Philly fans on your side, it could definitely be an even bigger challenge. That Eagles offense is just so alarming, and I can never trust them because with the amount of talent that they have, for them to be, for them to horrifically underachieve just a year after winning the Super Bowl, nobody could have seen it coming. And I think we're going to get a really ugly, low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to play extremely well. But having said that, I think I got to go with the Eagles here just because they're at home. I think their defense is a lot healthier. And like I said, with Lane Johnson coming back, I think that should improve things on the offensive side somewhat. I don't think it's going to be a complete game changer for them, but as long as Jalen Hurts just doesn't, completely implode at the worst possible time, then I think they should be able to be ahead of the sticks for most of the way. So I think they'll win 26-20.
Yeah, I had 27-24 for the Niners.
Yeah. All right, now Sunday Night Football.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. We got the New England Patriots versus the LA Chargers, the 2nd seed versus the 7th seed. And, of course, it's both of our teams playing head-to-head.
Yeah.
On a Sunday, right before Monday when we have to be back in here for classes. It's just perfect timing.
Yeah, one of us is going to be really happy and the other one is not going to want to be here.
Yeah. One of us is going to, if the loser's probably going to want to just absolutely smash something in their house because you just don't want your team to lose at all. And you don't want to hear all about it the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see how I should start with this one. How confident are you in your team to actually win this game? So I'm actually curious.
I'm actually pretty confident. I think I don't think it's no. I'm not saying that is like we're absolutely gonna win. But there was a universe going into Week 18 where we could have played. We could have played Jacksonville. We could have played the Broncos. There were just so many options, and I was excited in a way when I saw that we were going to get to play the Patriots because it is the most favorable matchup for the Chargers. I think that maybe not of every they're the Patriots are better than the Steelers. Certainly, I think I think they're better than the Steelers.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know if I trust this Patriots pass rush. I think if you give Justin Herbert time, he's really going to get to be able to exploit that defense. And, the Chargers defense is pretty good. And it's been overplayed, I think, that the Patriots haven't played that many great teams this year. But it is true. I don't know if they've played a defense quite like the Chargers defense this year. I think it's going to be harder for them to score points. It is going to be a close game. I agree. But I still have faith in my team. I have a lot of faith in Justin Herbert, even when people don't. Now that they're in the playoffs, it's a huge monkey on his back, but I think he finally is able to exercise his demons.
Okay, so a couple things to take away from that. Number one, I agree with you. The Chargers defense is really good. Like, really good. I mean, even last week against the Broncos, they didn't give up a single touchdown, and they were playing mainly backups. And the Broncos were playing their starters in the hopes of getting the number 1 seed, which they ultimately did because of Jaquan McMillan. But, you say that the Patriots haven't seen the Chargers defense or a defense like the Chargers. Is it possible that the Chargers defense hasn't seen an offense like this? Is that possible?
I mean, I think it is. They've played. What have they played? They played the Chiefs with Mahomes twice.
Yeah.
They've played.
You played Jacksonville.
Yeah, they played
and you
Jacksonville.
got destroyed.
We played Indianapolis when they were fully healthy. No, I mean, it's true. I like Drake May a lot. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think that's a different conversation, the MVP race. I think it is going to be very close, but I think Drake May certainly has made a very good case for MVP this year.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he should be the MVP because, first of all, the Rams, they went, like I said earlier, they went from being the 1 seed to the 5th seed, and a huge reason why is because Matthew Stafford threw 3 interceptions against Atlanta, and it completely, cost them the game, and they only lost by 3. Number 2 is because Matthew Stafford, the touchdown pass to interceptions, that might be a lot better than what Drake May has, but Matthew Stafford has a way better team around him than Drake May does.
Absolutely.
Like, give Drake May the same supporting cast that Matthew Stafford has, you're getting the same numbers. And you're probably getting the same results. But also with the hard schedule, it ain't like the Patriots have been playing like complete cakewalks or complete cupcakes the entire season. They beat Carolina. They beat Buffalo at Buffalo. They beat Tampa at Tampa. They beat Baltimore at Baltimore. I understand that there were a few duds along the way, especially early in the year when they lost to the Raiders and the Steelers. But Drake May has been an absolute stud. They've been running the ball extremely well. Stephon Diggs, just a year after tearing his ACL, was able to get 1,000 yards. And the defense is starting to get healthier. Robert Spillane's coming back. Yeah. Milton Williams. Hopefully Tonga comes back because he could be a huge boost for that run support. And more importantly, I like this Patriots defense against that Chargers offense because your line is absolutely horrible. I mean, you're starting Bobby Hart for crying out loud.
Oh, it's
Bobby
true.
Hart. And Omarion Hampton hasn't practiced. I like Kamani Vidal, but if you could shut down the run and pretty much just squeeze in the passing attack, and if you generate enough pressure, then you're going to get to Justin Herbert enough. And remember, Herbert in the playoffs has been absolutely horrible. I'm not going to go the Emmanuel Acho route and say that he's a social media quarterback, but think about it. 27-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, you had Brandon Staley, and that defense was as horrible as it gets, but that offense was completely one-dimensional after halftime, and they ended up losing that game 31-30. Then a few years later, a few years later, something like that, 2 years later, against the Houston Texans, when you were favorites to win it, Justin Herbert throws 4 interceptions, and they get absolutely blown off the map, 32-12 by Houston. And there's a huge chip on his shoulder, just like the one that Lamar Jackson had before winning his first playoff game in 2020. And I feel like Herbert is probably under more pressure than Allen, just for the simple fact that he's yet to get a playoff win under his belt. And I think with a very well-coached Patriots team with, an outstanding defense and a highly efficient offense, I think it's going to be a really close game. I think we're going to get a back-and-forth showdown for both sides. But it's just, I'm not going to say it's a complete lock that the Patriots win, but just like you with your team, I'm completely confident that we can, pull one off.
Well, okay, here's where I stand.
Okay.
The Chargers, Justin Herbert, I think we know how talented he is. Like, you've seen it too. And, like, even against pretty elite pass rushes, he's been able to, make man miss. He's been able to scramble,
right,
make tough throws without much
Keep
pressure.
Going. Yep.
And I think it also comes down to what our pass rush can do against Drake May. Obviously, last year when these two teams played, completely different teams.
They were terrible.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Completely different teams. I don't think we're going to sack Drake May, what was it, like 6 times?
Something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to him that many times. But I think if we do force pressure on him and force him into some tough throws, I don't know if he can do that. This is his first playoff game. We don't know how he's going to do in the playoffs. And, early in the season when teams were getting pressure on him, he was forced to make some poor throws at times.
Well,
that led to interceptions. I don't know. I do think it's going to be a very close game. And I think especially if the Patriots can get off to a good lead, I think that they have a good chance of holding on. But if the Chargers can get out in front, I think that they'll be able to hold on to.
Well, we didn't know what Jaden Daniels was going to do last year. He ended up going to the NFC Championship. They beat Tampa, and they beat the 1 seed in the Lions. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. You don't know what Drake May is going to look like in the playoffs, but there's a chance that he could be absolutely incredible and be the reason why they get back to the championship. I don't think we really need to, talk about who we think's going to win. Just give me a final score.
27-20.
24-21.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a close game. I feel like both quarterbacks are going to turn the ball over at least once, but I think, it'll be a defensive game. It really just comes down to which quarterback can show up in the clutch more. So, and I think either way, if one of them has the ball in the hands in the final 2 minutes of the game, you better watch out.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got one more on our docket. We got the Texans and the Steelers on Monday Night Football. It probably might be, but then again, it is the Steelers. You never know what you're going to get from them. What do you think the Steelers can do if they have any chance of pulling off an upset? What do you think they need to do?
Well, first, I think that they need to find ways to slow down Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. I think that that's probably the best pass rush in football right now. I mean, their defense as a whole, obviously, is, again, probably the best. Statistically, they are the best. And somehow they need to find ways, first of all, to slow down this pass rush.
Yep.
But I also think that they need to figure out something in their run game on offense, because that's been terrible this year.
I know. And Jalen Warren's like a pretty good back if you really think about it. And Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, and Kenneth Gainwell. I think they're using him wrong. But I think just as importantly on the other side, you need to stop C.J. Stroud. I think you need to stop this Texans passing offense, because they haven't looked great this year.
No.
Their run offense isn't that great either.
Nope.
I think C.J. Stroud has had his weaknesses, sort of like what I was saying potentially with Drake May. Like, if they can get pressure on C.J. Stroud, I think he's prone to mistakes. So it needs to be a really low-scoring defensive game for the Steelers to win. And I think that the Texans are going to have enough big plays to get it done. But if they don't, then maybe it will be a close game.
Yeah. I'm going to look at this game from Houston's perspective. You brought up the offense. I have never been a huge fan of it. I mean, you look at it over the last 2 years, it has been completely disappointing since C.J. Stroud's phenomenal rookie season, There's always that one team where you're like, okay, you have a lot of hope for them, you have a lot of high expectations, and all of a sudden they come out flat and they ultimately disappoint. And I feel like with C.J. Stroud, since coming back from concussion protocol this year, he's definitely been solid, but he hasn't, been completely mind-blowing, so to speak. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of it is his fault. He hasn't had Joe Mixon all year. I mean, you had a bright spot in Woody Marks, who has had a pretty promising rookie season, but the O-line has definitely been a huge concern for a long time now. And really this year, they've had a huge tendency to let opponents hang around for way too long. And against someone like Aaron Rodgers, I don't care how old he is, that is not a guy that you want to, keep in the ball game with plenty of time left on the clock. So I know that the Texans defense is absolutely elite. They've been making quarterbacks' lives miserable all season long. But I feel like if the offense just can't get any points on the board, then that defense can really only do but so much. I don't care how fantastic they are or if they come up with a pick six or a scoop and score. If the offense doesn't show up and play consistent and show some life and, momentum, then it's going to be a very, very ugly defeat. And who knows what decisions the Texans are going to make this upcoming offseason.
Yeah, but you mentioned that all these games have been close down the stretch, but they've won all of them. They've won their last 9 games.
Yeah,
like
and
they've
it's
been
because of great defense.
Yeah, it's because of great defense. It's true. And I think, I don't know. I mean, they're as hot as any team in football right now.
Mm-hmm.
They are the most complete defense in football statistically. Honestly, they are. We don't have to get this far right now, but I do think that they're my favorites to win the AFC this year.
Woo!
Yeah, I mean,
that's a hot take.
Really? I mean, as open as it is, it could be anybody. Why not?
It can, but I don't know. I mean, listen, I think if it was... I always think back to the 2015 Denver Broncos. It was Peyton Manning's last season, and it was pretty much his swan. So we all knew that he was going to be done at the end of the year. He just did not look the same anymore. But that defense pretty much just carried him right to the finish line and played absolutely fantastic against Pittsburgh, against New England, and then obviously had their bigger statement performance against Carolina. But 10 years later, I don't remember the last time we've actually seen a defense truly carry an offense to the playoffs. Even last year with the Eagles, their defense played great against Patrick Mahomes, but a huge reason why they got to that point was because of Saquon and because of Jalen Hurts and because of the offensive firepower that they've had. So I understand what you're saying. I think defense wins championships, but the offense can't just be a supplementary part because not in this day and age.
Yeah, but I mean, you said it hasn't happened in 10 years, but this year has not at all been like the last 10 years.
No, 10 years, because February 2016, what I mean.
That's right, Super Bowl 60, right.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think, this year's been different in so many ways. Why can't it be different in that regard as well?
All right, we'll see what happens, but what's your final score for this one?
I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a blowout. I think Texans win 20-3.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a pretty sloppy game, too. I'm going to go 24-9.
24-9? Okay.
Yeah. I think as long as they run the ball really well, which Pittsburgh's defense hasn't been completely great at, all season long, I think that, Texans, as long as they just stay out of their own way and they find a way to put it away down the stretch, then I think they'll be in pretty good shape and the defense can take care of business from there.
All right.
All right. Well, that just about wraps it up. Thank you for watching another episode of Dialed In. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. Welcome to the 303 Sports Network. This is Colin O'Callahan and Ryan Kirton signing off. Have a nice weekend, everyone. So long. All right.